Okay, so now it looks like LIV Golf has made a U-turn in its stance on the official World Golf Rankings. If you remember, only 1 year ago, they had pulled out their application and said they were no longer pursuing it. Well, all that has changed, and on top of that, now it looks like they may just get the official World Golf Rankings that they wanted all this time. So we got to talk about what's changed, why this is, what are the chances that it's going to happen, and the bigger picture, if they do get official World Golf Rankings, what does this mean for the future? What does this mean for players who may or may not make the switch from one league to the other? What does this mean for implications, obviously, for majors and things like that? And most importantly, what does it mean for the impending, will it ever happen, possible deal with the PGA Tour? Because effectively, if they get that last piece of the puzzle, LIV really has all it really needs to continue to move forward with or without the PGA Tour. So a lot's changed, a lot to talk about. First, of course, we got to thank this week's sponsor, Titleist. And guys, nothing can do more to sharpen your short game than a fresh set of grooves, especially if those grooves are spin milled into a new Vokey design SM10 wedge. And Bob Vokey and his team, they're always grinding, and the work shows in the SM10. It's already a favorite among the best wedge players in the world. We recently had the chance to go down to Georgia and get fit for ourselves for the SM10s, and it's just amazing how versatile these clubs can really be if you've got a really well set, fit set in your bag. So what I would say is take advantage of that technology in the new SM10s and really take it to the next level by going out there and getting fit. You can go on the Titleist website, the Vokey website, find a fitter near you, go there, give it a try, Vokey.com, and it is trust me, it's a game changer when it comes to those scoring clubs for sure. So Mike, kind of a quick rewind. Believe it or not, almost to the day, it was a year ago. At that time, as we all know, it was Greg Norman who was the CEO of LIV. And at that time, Greg had effectively retracted the application for the official World Golf Rankings. For anybody who maybe have missed out on some of that, let me bring you up to speed. Effectively, what Greg had done is he addressed LIV players and he said, "We have made significant efforts to fight for you and ensure your accomplishments are recognized within the existing ranking system. Unfortunately, OWGR has shown little willingness to productively work with us." So that was official World Golf Rankings, OWGR. Is basically expressing his frustration, which we had covered at the time in an episode back then, his frustration of saying it's not worth our efforts, it's not worth our time. Now, there was a response to that from the official World Golf Rankings. At the time, Peter Dawson, he was the chairman of the OWGR board, and what he had said was, "We are not at war with them. This decision to not make them eligible is not political. It's entirely technical. LIV players are self-evidently good enough to be ranked. They're just not playing in a format where they can be ranked equitably with the other 24 tours and thousands of players trying to compete on them." So, they're trying to dispel, this is not us specifically targeting them. There was just a reason why they couldn't do it. Now, a lot of us, and we even surmised in that episode that come on, there's got to be a way to make the math work. And on the surface, it doesn't seem like a whole lot's changed. LIV is still playing 54 holes.
Still 3 rounds, yeah.
They're doing no-cut events.
Right.
However, as many have pointed out, is that there are some PGA Tour events even, and other events within, official World Golf ranked circuits that only play 54. We have no-cut PGA Tour events, so that can't be the full story. Well, part of that story was basically the way you get relegated out of and get into LIV. The case was made at the time that it's too much of a closed system. You're in LIV and
and that's it. Those are the teams. No one else is coming in. Yeah.
Plus, there's that on top of it. There's a team environment. So it begs the question, what's changed? Because there's not a whole lot of that changed. One thing that immediately have to highlight that has changed is the change of leadership. And this is something that honestly I've been saying for a while. I'm not someone who necessarily wants to see. I'm not a Jay Monahan hater. I mean, I know there's some of them that are out there. I'm not one of them. But I've said with how stale this has gotten in those negotiations, I feel like maybe a change in leadership might shake that up a little bit. Here we are seeing a shakeup. So, first of all, we know, and something we've talked about here, Scott O'Neill has since taken over as the LIV Golf CEO. He replaced Greg Norman. On the official World Golf Ranking side, you have Trevor Immelman, who took over as the chair of the official World Golf Ranking.
Okay.
So now we've got 2 new players in the game. Now, on Scott O'Neill's side, he kicked off the year kind of doubling down. There were some quotes of him saying they were still not after official World Golf Rankings. And we saw on the LIV side, we saw them really work more directly with the majors. And we saw a lot of headway in that regard. Now, pretty much all of the majors now have a path for LIV golfers to earn their way in. Again, something we went over in detail here. But as you can imagine, official World Golf Rankings is still something that they really want to see in order to truly put that final nail in the coffin, so to speak, of validating LIV, because you're going to continue to see these headlines where you see guys like John Rahm, who obviously should be ranked somewhere in the top 50, is dropping out, and you're seeing these funny headlines where no-name guys are outranking some of the most well-known players in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just it. I mean, here's a couple things. Just taking a step back for a second. There's a couple of things that came down over the past couple of weeks that has me thinking that this merger is just getting further and further apart, right? You've got the Wesley suspension, right, which just still shows you that there's no end in sight. And then you have this, which is why is LIV going back to the drawing board to get world ranking points? I feel like they gave up on it for a while, right? Now they're back. Tells me that these two tours are most likely never coming together. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what it seems like.
Well, I think in a lot of ways, yes, they're still acting as rivals in a lot of ways.
Right.
But as far as the why are they chasing this again? I think there's some clear reasons here. One, like I said, is the change in leadership.
Right.
And 2 is that although LIV has not changed its most, I guess, core component structure, which is, 54 holes, the teams and things like that, they have made some adjustments to the way that guys get relegated, out of the league.
Yes.
However, there's policy and then there's action, which we'll talk about in a second, where this is kind of given those who are kind of wanting to see LIV get those official World Golf Ranking points, where this has given them hope, really starts right with the Masters and Augusta, which was where a lot of people with a keen eye noticed that both Scott O'Neill and Trevor Immelman were conversing. They were, it was reported on first, I think it was by Sportico, reported that the two of them were kind of informally meeting at Augusta and getting that kind of ball rolling again. And who knows, where it could have started as simply as saying, hey, let's give it a fresh start. Would you guys, we got 2 new players here heading up these 2 organizations. Yeah. Would you guys be open to it if we kind of put our application back in? Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting because I always thought that the idea of them getting world ranking points was just completely dead because they've submitted multiple times. They were denied multiple times. Right. And then now imagine if magically it's granted and they get it, that's all great and good. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, a guy like, Jocko Niemann's 83rd in the world. The guy's probably literally 3rd in the world.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes. And I think there's a certain motivation. You got to think about like a guy like Trevor Immelman on his side. There's going to be a certain motivation on the official World Golf Ranking, the OWGR's side, to also get something done here because their legitimacy gets called into question to a certain extent when you say you're seeing these guys when it's just like it's just common sense. It doesn't pass the sniff test to have a guy like Niemann who's playing as well as he is, and the only time he's earning any points is when he plays in majors.
Right.
So I don't honestly think that the entire motivation sits in LIV's corner. I think there's a strong motivation sitting in the corner of the official World Golf Rankings to somehow make the math work so that we can get them in there. On top of that, it also makes me wonder, maybe you could take the other side of that coin. You could say maybe the PGA Tour is closer to a deal. Maybe a lot of these guys who are, in the official World Golf Rankings board and the ones who are the decision makers over there, maybe if they see like the writings on the wall, they're coming together anyway, might as well do the right thing and find a way to get rankings. So keep this in mind, though. Like we said, there has to be something else that's changed in order to make this actually happen. So looking kind of through it a little bit here and kind of doing a little bit of digging, the idea of the 54 holes and the no cuts, that is something that's been said many times that can be handled mathematically. It really boiled largely down to the way that guys, like I said, get in or get out of the league, because you can't have a system where, a guy is in and he just basically has to do very little to accrue world golf rankings points without having any type of consequence of playing bad that he would be, fall out of the league or whatever it may be. And having team golf could kind of complicate that. So I saw a quote kind of from the Mirror, and they kind of put it pretty well. What they said was, it appeared LIV's closed shop roster and lack of qualification avenues into the league had proved a problem, as did the inclusion of a team competition running alongside an individual event. In order to fix one of those issues, LIV has since brought in promotion and relegation spots into the league. Players from outside the circuit can qualify via the Asian Tour's International Series, with the top performing player throughout the year promoted. Elsewhere, the league also introduced LIV Promotions, a qualifying event that saw 3 players earn their spot. Before this was changed to just 1. League bosses also implemented a drop zone. However, the legitimacy of this has been questioned. This came after both Bubba Watson and Brendan Grace finished in a relegation spot in 2024, but both were able to return for the current season. So kind of wrapping that up, and what he's saying there is LIV now does have an important qualification that the official World Golf Rankings has been after, in so much as that they're giving a chance for people to earn their way into the league through very clear-cut qualifying process, whether that be through their own tournament or through like the Asian Tour. And they're now defining that there's going to be a way that if based on performance, you'll be relegated out of the league. The trouble that they have with that was when you get a guy like Bubba Watson, who is a household name, arguably one of the faces of LIV, and also an invested team owner.
Yeah.
What happens when someone like that gets relegated out? And now it makes you wonder, how true really is this relegation process if you fall short and you should be out of the league, but no, there's this loophole and you're back in.
Right.
And that's a contention point for the official World Golf Rankings. So it does beg the question. And there's all the headlines and all the information we've seen is that they are very close. They're closer than ever before to getting an official World Golf Rankings deal, but no deal has yet been announced as when we're recording this show. So it makes me wonder, is this going to end up being the official World Golf Rankings holding their feet to the fire and be like, all right, guys, you put a lot in place, but now you got to stand by it. And if a guy like Bubba gets relegated out, as much as it's tough to have a team owner out, he's out. Yeah. And he's got to serve some other role in the league. Yeah. It remains to be seen. That being said, I want to take a quick pause here. Let's do a word from our sponsor, and then let's talk about, hypothetically, if this does happen, how that changes the big picture. What does this mean for golf? What does this mean for LIV? What does this mean for the PGA Tour? Because the writing to me is almost on the wall. It feels like it's going to happen in one way or another. It may require some changes from LIV, but it feels like they are as close as they've ever been. So let's do a word here, and then we'll come back to that.
All right, so get this. Justin Thomas hasn't won on tour in like 3 years. Changes his shoes, wins. Coincidence? I mean, come on. I mean, I believe it, and I love it because FootJoy, they make the best golf shoes out there. We've been wearing them for years, as you guys may or may not know. And this year they came out with the Hyperflex, their newest shoe, one of the most beautiful shoes I've ever seen. And talk about stability and comfort. I mean, this thing has it all. So the minute we got them, we went out, we played 36 holes. I mean, out of the box comfort. I mean, that's what I call it. Out of the box comfort. You don't need to break them in. And like I said, they look great. They've got the multiple colorway patterns of the red pop and the blue. And not to get a little nerdy on you, but they got that true fit system that allows you to lock in. And guys, it's so important to have that stability when you're swinging the golf club. So the all-new Hyperflex, it's super athletic. It's built for the modern golfer who demands more from their game. And like I said, one of the best ball strikers in the game.
Clearly helped JT. It did help him.
You pay attention. So JT made the switch. You guys should make the switch too. Go to footjoy.com. Check out the all-new Hyperflex today.
All right, guys, this is exciting because we're working with the PGA of America to get you early registration for the 2026 PGA Championship tickets at Aronimink. And what registration does is it puts you ahead of the general public with a preferred place in line to purchase tickets once they become available in May. And all you have to do is go to golficity.com/PGA to get registered. Registration is absolutely free and does not obligate you to purchase tickets. But like I said, what it does do is it secures your preferred place in line. So getting registered is an absolute no-brainer. On top of that, Mike and I will be there at Aronimink in Philly for the 2026 PGA Championship. So we're definitely hoping to see a few of you there. And remember, this is a major championship, so tickets are going to sell out fast, and early registration is your way in the door. So make sure you use our link to get registered, and we will see you there. All right, so like we laid out earlier, it does sound like LIV is really close to getting across the line, at least in theory. We even had some quotes towards the end of last year of Bryson DeChambeau talking about how he had felt that LIV had reached all of the requirements that were, there and proposed by the official World Golf Rankings in order to kind of get across that line. And who knows? We don't know what that math is going to end up look like. It may just be that winning a LIV event doesn't quite garner you as many official World Golf Ranking points as a cut line 72 hole event on the PGA Tour.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's how they make the math work. So it's not quite in apples for apples. I don't know, but it sounds like the situation would be like you're awfully close with the way they guys get in and out of the league, but you just kind of have to stick to it. So let's assume that LIV is motivated enough to make that change and say, here's how it's going to be, guys. You're relegated out by points. You're out, no matter who you are. You know what I mean? It could be John Rahm. Not saying it's going to be,
right.
But if they get to that point, then it seems like the official World Golf Rankings, governing body has no choice but to say, like, okay, we're going to give them the points.
Yeah.
Let's say that happens. Let's say that announcement comes through in a week or two from now. How do you think that changes the big picture?
Man, I don't know. Because like I said, I think the biggest sticking point of those guys that are just ranked 100 and they know they're not, it's like they can't climb that leaderboard, and it takes years or some major wins. Well,
at least those guys who had been falling for the last couple of years would be starting to head in the right direction.
Of course, they'd be starting to head him back, but like if you fell off from like Neiman, he's our example. He's, like I said, he's probably top 5 in the world, top 7 maybe, right? And he's ranked 83rd, right? So now tomorrow, we're granted these official word. Now I could start again. It's like he's starting from scratch.
Yeah, I get that. But I mean, I think honestly with solid, consistent performance like you've seen from him, even if they're not quite getting as many points as they were in another tour event, I still think he's moving in the right direction.
Yeah. It's better than moving down.
Where I think that a lot of the pressure has been taken off, I think the biggest driver for official World Golf Rankings was, of course, the majors. Mm-hmm. And since then, we've seen LIV work its own deals out directly with most of the majors that based on your performance in LIV, you could earn your spot. So the door is not shut on them specifically just for being in LIV, but there's still other things. There's still things like the Ryder Cup. Where we see reliant on captain's picks, because unless you had a situation like we saw with like Koepka or somebody like that, unless you really just blow it out of the water and perform incredibly well in all 4 majors, you don't have the points to be there, and you're relying on a captain's pick.
Yeah.
So I think by just starting to get those points back, it now brings these guys into like automatic spots on Ryder Cup. There's still a lot that hangs in the balance. And I think it really does change the conversation that a couple other guys who might have been on the fence of where they're going to go might move over to LIV.
It could be. I mean, if you do see world rankings, you might see some guys who might entertain an offer that they're just still contemplating. Maybe that was the last deciding factor. But I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it'd be interesting to see, because I was going to ask you this too. I don't think the whole point thing is going to happen. It will blow my mind if it does. But if it does happen, do you think that the Ryder Cup point thing would be next?
As far as what?
As far as LIV guys can qualify for the Ryder Cup based on points instead of picks.
Yes. I think ultimately, if you look at it,
because you can't do that now on LIV. You can't earn Ryder Cup points while playing on LIV.
Right, because Ryder Cup points are directly tied to official World Golf
there's
rankings.
A way.
So if they get World Golf ranking points, they will be, in theory, developing Ryder Cup points. Mm-hmm. It then will just come down to whether or not the governing body behind the Ryder Cup has its own separate policy or ban, which we know on the PGA, the U.S. side, it's the PGA, not the PGA of America. And as we saw with them choosing a captain's pick, there's not a outright ban.
Right.
They were kind of just, if they were just kind of, taking a backseat to where the points kind of landed on that whole thing. But I think where we might land is, let's say this happens. Let's say you get the official World Golf Rankings. I think in a way you'll see on the LIV side, you'll see guys go from one tour to the other here and there. If both tours are going to continue, as we've said on the podcast before, with each sitting on $1.5 billion, I don't think either tour is going anywhere. I think they're both going to be around. Mm-hmm. So you'll ultimately will see guys who shift back and forth from one tour to the other, I think. That's at least guys going from the PGA Tour to LIV here and there. But I think what you'll see is the mind-blowing signing bonuses, like what we saw for Jon Rahm, will kind of go away.
I think so too.
Right? Because I think LIV, in a way, especially in its first couple seasons as a true startup and the big risk that was involved, required that kind of money to pull guys away.
Sure.
If now guys have paths into majors, if official World Golf Rankings come around, I don't think that they need to lure them away with the same type of money. Mm-hmm. Now, LIV already has some really significant purses. There's still good money over there. I think what it's more so going to be is guys will start to choose which style and schedule fits their personal life best. Mm-hmm. As we see LIV developing itself into a global international tour with really a strong focus on growing the game globally and going to places that the PGA Tour doesn't. I think you get a lot of guys like I see like the strength of Australia and the Australian team and what they've done with Adelaide and stuff like that. Mm. I can see a guy now even more so who is on the fence of which tour he's going to play on. If he's from Australia, maybe he's got more of a pull to go to LIV in that case, right?
Yeah.
Versus maybe a guy who doesn't, want to do as much international travel, wants to play most of his Sundays in the States.
Yep.
That might be somebody who picks the PGA Tour. Mm-hmm. So I think money might start to become less and less part of the conversation and the deciding factor of which tour to go to, especially if this playing field starts to really become much more leveled, where you can get into majors on both and you can get official World Golf Rankings on both. I think that a lot of that dust will start to settle.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I'm curious to see if they do end up getting points. If it does happen, what guys would maybe entertain going over there? I mean, because it's names like Ricky Fowler. You know what I mean? Here's a guy, great career, made good money, right? Great partnerships, all the stuff that he does. But he's at the stage where like he can go over to LIV now. They could pay him $10 million to jump, and he can make $50 million like a Taylor Gooch has made, and just kind of coast off in the rest. If he's not pulling his weight on the PGA Tour, like he's not in majors anymore.
Yeah,
I'm saying a guy like he's an extreme example.
In a way, though, you're kind of defining the exact reason why there's the hesitation on the official World Golf Ranking side. If it really feels like LIV is a place where you can coast, right? Mm-hmm. That's the whole idea. They're saying like we can't give you points if it's just a coast through league.
But can the coast through league give you less points? You give you points,
no, but this is what I mean.
Mathematically
like,
less.
They need to be like where guys can't just go over there just to take a victory lap. Right. If you don't perform over there, you've got to be out, and it doesn't matter who you are. Right? That's, I think, the main crusp of this. Mm-hmm. In order to say, like, that, again, they'll come back to what the official World Golf Rankings has leaned on, is saying, like, it's got to be fair, it's got to be equitable. If you don't play, especially now on the PGA Tour, which is where it's gotten to with signature events and likewise, and now even seeing the FedEx Cup really starting to lessen the amount of guys that are making it to the playoffs,
right.
If the PGA Tour is only getting more competitive, then LIV has to keep that pace.
That's true.
So I don't see it I don't see it as being guys like getting paid to in the beginning, I get it. I get why LIV made those moves. Throw the big money, make the big splashy headlines, get the name out there, grab the guys you need to grab. But now I think it's got to be more of a focus of, getting players that make the sense in order for the league guys who enjoy that style of play, whether it be team play, global play, whatever it may be. And I think you'll start to see that dust settle and matchups a little bit more in that regard.
Yeah. I'm curious to see what happens. And if LIV does end up growing and they're forced to add more teams because more players are playing on it, I can see them adding more events and guys alternating. Oh, we're not playing this week. The Crushers aren't playing this week. It's just so they still have their 14-week schedule that they were promised. I could see shifts and changes like that.
Yeah.
But I still think that LIV can grow. I think a lot of people have been messaging and saying things like LIV is a 48-player max. It can't grow. I think LIV can grow. I think it can. So
listen,
maybe this will help it.
If they've shown about anything, they're willing to make some changes. So we'll see. But I think no doubt, like if this does happen, and it just seems, like I said, the writing's kind of on the wall. It does seem, especially with the two guys that are involved now and talking, that this is probably going to happen. And if it does happen, I think it does change that landscape just a little bit more. So we want to hear what you guys think about it. Make sure you drop your comments below. Do you think it's going to happen? And if it does, what will be the overall effect on the game and on both the leagues if they do get their official World Golf Rankings? Let us know. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.